Welcome to KCPS-TV. My name is Justin Robinson. This is a KCPS-TV special report. The topic today will be the issue of transfers in the Kansas City Public Schools. We are joined here today with Dr. Stephen Green, the superintendent of the Kansas City Public Schools. How are you doing today, Dr. Green?
Doing well. Good to be here.
Well, before we get into that issue, let's just talk a little bit about yourself. So, where are you from, and how did you actually end up in this position that you're in here today?
Oh, wow. It's an interesting journey, but I born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. Did most of my schooling there, high school, and also all of my collegiate work, Ball State, for my bachelor's degree in English Literature and Composition. Did a master's degree in English Literature and Composition at Ball State as well. I was a student athlete there at Ball State during my undergraduate time, and was on a football scholarship. Was running back, and started 2 years in a row, the last 2 years. Then did my master's there at Ball State, and then moved on to actually teach in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I was at one of the townships, as kind of the first tier suburban districts. Okay. Went back to my high school actually, and taught right alongside English, right alongside some of my own high school teachers, the ones who taught me. And then started to take a look at administration. I was taking some administrative courses, got into a cohort at Butler University where I got a second master's at Butler University, and also then went on to pursue my doctorate at Indiana University. But got into administration and then moved over to a neighboring district, and was assistant principal at a middle school, Belzer Middle School, for a couple of years, and then at a high school, both interim principal and assistant principal at a high school, and then became assistant superintendent. So I kind of did a...
And this was all still in the Indiana area?
This was all in Indiana, all in Indiana.
What made you initially want to get into teaching and working with students?
Well, I think it's in my family. My mother was an English teacher for many, many years. She taught at Crispus Attucks High School. Crispus Attucks High School is where Oscar Robinson went to school. She taught Oscar Robinson. I have a lot of
That
pictures.
was the school from the movie Hoosiers, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Right. And so she taught him, and that was a source of inspiration for me. My mother, she went on to get her master's at Butler University. So it was kind of predestined, I think, that I was going to turn out with her influence on me.
In your household, was your mother a big influence? Was your father there? Mm-hmm. Kind of what was your family situation, and why was she such a big influence on your decision to go into education?
Yes, my mother was a huge influence. Dad was there too, and my dad was a letter carrier, postal letter carrier, served in the military. He was the structure of the household. He's the disciplinarian. He kept me in line. My mother was, she was English teacher. Then she became a counselor at Shortridge High School. But my gravitation toward books and reading was through her. She used to, in the summertime and other times when she was off, sell Encyclopedia Britannica, would move all over the city selling those Encyclopedia Britannica, sitting down in people's home. We had a house full of encyclopedias. And so, and by osmosis, I mean, I was always curious and was reading a lot, more so than I thought I ever did. But it wasn't like a signed reading. I was just curious. I wanted to learn about how cellular functions work, with how they divided and all that sort of stuff. So oh gosh, that's interesting. And so found a lot of downtime filled with reading, almost cover to cover, the entire encyclopedia collection.
Didn't have Google back then,
right?
To find out information.
So and obviously we were in church, etc., and my involvement there. But eventually, I was inspired a lot by my mother. She, I also was a thespian in high school. Influenced a lot by going to see plays that at Crispus Attucks High School. My mother would take me, and I'd see the actors performing and seeing them rehearse, etc. So that led me to be a well-rounded athlete, a three-sport athlete in high school: football, basketball, track, also a thespian in various plays that we did in spring plays. So I was all over the place.
What were a couple of principles that your parents instilled in you that you kind of still carry on today?
Well, I certainly would say the value of education and knowing what that means, not only just in terms of what it does for intellectually and stimulating you intellectually, but also given the history of African Americans and that being the passport to a better life, and also the kind of the expectation that my grandmother, grandfather, father, mother, they all put on us. My older sister, I have a sister that's 2 years older than I am. Both of us were, that it was on us. They put it on us that we've sacrificed for you to have an opportunity. Don't you dare let us down. And so that was instilled in us a great deal.
Is that what drives you now? Because you said throughout your career you've been inclined to work with urban youth. Is that kind of what drives you, because you want urban youth to have that opportunity through education to better their lives?
You're exactly right. That is a big part of the driving force, the idea of giving back and making sure that the next generation has at least the opportunity that you had, if not more, and opening the doors for that. So, and also the whole idea of overcoming obstacles, overcoming in the face of adversity. That's something that I've kind of thrived on. When the odds are against you and it seems like it's impossible, it's going to be impossible for you to kind of find your way out of this situation, which we find ourselves now in the Kansas City Public Schools. Many people are, betting against you or just don't see how you're ever going to make it. And so that kind of story has played itself over and over in my career. As I've grown up and gone on to do different things.
That's the perfect transition into the transfer issue that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Can you recap a little bit about how we got to where we are and exactly where we are in the transfer issue within the district? Well,
the transfer issue is something that intersects with a school district that's unaccredited. So you put those two things together, that has led us to the situation that we're in. The transfer law was in effect for 20-some years ago, and it basically was designed to help a K-8 district consolidate with a larger district if that district should need support or run into financial challenges, et cetera. It became applicable just this past summer, in which the Supreme Court ruled for most of the state except Kansas City, basically that any district that's unaccredited, the families in that district have the right to go to a neighboring district, and the sending district must pay the tuition and the transportation for students to attend. So it's really, the intent was to take a family out of an unaccredited district and give them the choice, if they wanted to leave that district and go to a neighboring district that is accredited.
What do you think about that intent?
I don't think it applies as well to education as whoever thought of the plan. I think when I first heard it, I said, this sounds pretty much like something that you would practice in normal business. That basically what you're saying to a business that's not serving its customers well, we're going to run you out of business. Therefore, we're going to take your customers and send them to another business that is doing well, et cetera.
Why is it different in education?
Well, I just think that when you start talking about children and you start talking about transferring, and you're not thinking about community, you're not thinking about keeping a community intact. The community is a school and all of its surrounding component parts. There's storefronts and churches and other businesses. So when you start to unravel and take the customer base out of a community and send them elsewhere, you're also taking them away from other parts of the community, et cetera, and transferring them away from that. And so in essence, what you're doing is unraveling and dismantling a community. And I don't think the insight was there when that was created, and you apply that to a school, because a school plays such a big part of what a community is in a neighborhood it's kind of a thread. And once you start to pull that thread, you pretty much have dismantle that community.
And so you have seen this happen in education over on the other side of the state with a couple of school districts over there, Riverside and Normandy, I believe.
That's correct.
Those are two school districts. They have been unaccredited and they have to deal with the transfer issue. What has happened to those two school districts?
Those school districts are on the verge of bankruptcy. Normandy being probably the one that's most vulnerable right now. They will, I think this very day, they're closing one of their schools and we're laying off 100 teachers. They will not make it till March before going bankrupt. And evidence of that is the commissioners had to request $6.8 million just to help Normandy make it through the rest of the year. And then that will start all over again as they go into the next year because they'll have no money. So again, they pretty much, and the irony of this situation is because the assumption was that all the students would leave. But what's really happened is 12% of the students left, 88% of the students stayed. So now you've got a bankrupt district with 88% of the population still there because there were other things keeping those families there around that school that had not necessarily to do with all of the educational things that we measure in terms of test scores. There were relationships with teachers, relationships with principals, relationships in the community that were there. And again, it's a false assumption to think that, well, just because we can make a quality seat over in this neighboring district and we can transplant you over here, everything's going to be fine. That's not the case because there are other ties and there are other things that are affected that anchor that child in that community that don't have to do with test scores.
And this is an issue that as we're sitting here today, about to head into Christmas break in 2013, this is an issue that's not just the Kansas City Public Schools. It almost affects everyone on this side of the state line.
Yes.
Because, as you mentioned, those school districts on the St. Louis side, they're going bankrupt. Well, they're supposed to be paying tuition for those kids the 12% who have decided to go somewhere else. So that means those other school districts have to absorb that cost. So if we find ourselves in the same situation, the independent school district, Lee Summits, what could happen to them?
Well, what could happen to them is a number of different things. One, once you begin that kind of interference and infiltration of the school district, who's to say that any one of them, if they should become unaccredited, might not see the same thing happen. Also, as students would leave this school district and go into their school district, they have to then hire teachers. They have to have the same ability to have the same types of services that we're providing our students. We have a lot of wraparound services, social health, mental health, a lot of services that other districts don't have to supply because we have more of our families are in need of those services than they are in the neighboring school districts. We have high foreign language or ELL population. I think we're the highest in the state. We have high free and reduced lunch population. That means more of our students are below the poverty line or at and need that kind of assistance. We also have high mobility, higher mobility than many of the other ones. And those three factors are factors that you have to work harder. The students are just as bright, maybe even brighter than some of our surrounding districts in some regards. But in some circumstances, you got to work harder and you got to have the support services that wrap around that child. So if one of our children go to Lee Summit, go to Grandview or Raytown, they better have those services available for our students in that regard. And that's what I think some of the concern is. The lawsuit that the neighboring districts filed was that you're now asking us without the money to take the students out, without the resources that need to come with that student, so it's an unfunded mandate. They refer to the Hancock Amendment. Yes. It's an undue expense that we're going to encounter. And they're also looking at the fact that if we absorb those students, and the way the law reads, should the district that was unaccredited become accredited, those students now have to come back to the district. So that's a lot of moving around that's really not in the best interest of the children.
And so with the Supreme Court upholding, so therefore transfers are still on the table for students in the Kansas City Public Schools right now.
That is correct. What the court ruled was that the appeal based on an unfunded mandate was not valid and was not unconstitutional. Therefore, the transfer law still holds.
And so you've had conversations, I believe, I would assume, with some of the other superintendents. What are their thoughts, and what are you guys talking about to work together at this point?
Well, we have worked together on a number of different plans that would offset the notion of transfer. And you've probably heard about it. It's referred to as the Superintendent's Plan, or the MESA Plan, the Missouri Association of School Administrators Plan. I've been a part of the discussion with that, and there are parts of the plan that I have some concerns about. But overall, the plan does seek to preserve the Kansas City Public Schools. It does seek to address this issue of transfer and the idea of shipping kids into other neighboring school districts, et cetera.
How does it do that?
Well, the plan that we have, the MESA plan, as it now looks at it, it has several categories. Provisional, well, first of all, fully accredited, provisional accredited, then they have another category called academically stressed, and then lapsed. Under the circumstance that we would be, given our scores from the previous year, we would be provisionally accredited, so there would be no transfer law. The other part of it is, though, it looks at every individual school in terms of whether it meets the APR or not. We had 13 schools that were fully accredited. We had 6 schools in our district that were provisionally accredited. So it would look at those that are below that. We have 13 schools that would be considered unaccredited, and looks at those and does a review team comes in and looks at each of those individual schools and develops a kind of IEP, or individualized education plan for each of those schools to help them get better. And so that would be more, and then if there is any transfer in this piece, and this is something I do have some concerns about, it does allow for transfer to take place intra-district or within the district. So if a student is in one of those 13 unaccredited schools, then they would have the choice to go to another school in the district that is accredited. And so that's something that I still have some reservations about how that would look and how it would work.
That's just an option for a plan right now. What would it take for that plan to actually become what's the policy moving forward?
It would take something like the State Department, DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education would have to adopt it. There would even have to be some legislative changes with regard to that. So it would have to be recognized by both the legislature and DESE as a viable alternative to what is currently in place. But right now, that's the low bar, because anything is better than what's already at play right now. We've seen the disaster play itself out.
Who supports what's already in play right now? It doesn't sound like any educators think that this is a good idea. Who says that this is a good idea right now, and what's their even argument for this being in place?
Well, those who want to see more radical change for and reform for public education, those who really are not necessarily fans of public education, who think that public education is a bad idea, those are people that would be more so in favor of this kind of game plan.
And you've been in public education, you've been in urban education, which is a different ball game a lot of times in the surrounding communities. What do you see as the answer to the situation? Obviously, this Kansas City School District, Kansas City Public Schools, has had well-documented issues in the past. They've come out of those issues and then actually, returned back to some things. Concerns, obviously, for the many parents who have students in this school district. What do you think is the answer to this situation moving forward? Well,
we find ourselves in a precarious situation. I'm all in favor of learning, and I'm all in favor of research. I have done a lot of research in my education career. What has happened to urban education, particularly the large urban core school districts, they have become laboratories. They have become, you can go as far back as DSEG was a social experiment on what would happen if you were to, displace students and have them go and try to create this equity, et cetera. And I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about using the urban core as a laboratory in which we're going to study a social issue, particularly if it's happening without the consent of the folks who are actually the subject of the research. I'm very, and this, the onset of C-Trust, that the State Department has selected to come in and do a study of urban, and the notion is that they're going to use the Kansas City Public Schools as a laboratory to study. This is that same mindset again, and I'm very much concerned about what happens in urban education when if students aren't doing well, they'll tag it as a failure, and then by tagging it as a failure, they'll say now it's fair game for research. We will now use that that in geographical area as a laboratory to understand human behavior and understand it, educational issues. I'm troubled by that type of approach, and that's really what we're being faced with right now. It's almost as to say we're not getting anywhere, and so everything has been tried, and so therefore the best we can do is just study it some more, and we'll use what we learned in Kansas City, and we'll now take it on the road and do other things with it. I have real issue, and I have real resistance to that subjecting this community, subjecting our children to that kind of experimentation. I think the approaches that I've seen that work should be more rehabilitative and less punitive. They should be about helping and not punishing. The way in which the system is set up now, if you get tagged with unaccredited, it's like a scarlet letter. You are in some ways punished, stigmatized, as though you did it to yourself or you did it on purpose. What also happens, what has happened in the Kansas City Public Schools, once the Kansas City Public Schools begin to stagger and stumble, this is 15, 20 years ago, what typically happens, it happened in New York, I've seen it in Atlanta, I've seen it in Indianapolis, I've seen it in Dallas-Fort Worth, I've seen it in San Jose Unified. Vendors who have different projects converge on a school system like the Kansas City Public Schools, and they converge on it in like Piranha, and want to try their product out on, we got the answer, we want to try this out, etc. One of the things that we've done in the Kansas City Public Schools is pare away all these programs. I'm the 27th superintendent in 40 years, and each superintendent brought in a new program that some vendor attached himself to that superintendent and said, I've got your reading program, I've got your math program. And we had just an amalgamation of different programs that stuck on to the Kansas City Public Schools. We started to strip those away and said, no, you're not. We're going to pare it down to what we need. We're going to be more efficient with our dollars. We're going to be more laser-like focused with our curriculum, and we don't just take anything. But they think because you're desperate, we can sell you anything because you need something and we got your answer. And what happens is, and it's just, you can just call it free enterprise and capitalism, but everybody's got something they want to sell to a school district like Kansas City, and they know that you're kind of like, grasping at straws for anything, and so we're vulnerable. And what that starts to do, the weight of that starts to drag the district down. We've started to lighten the load, pull that stuff away, and that's why our boat has started to float.
Do you feel like you just need more time because this transfer situation,
Right.
it could almost, what it sounds like, it could cripple the school district in the future? Do you feel right now, as you come in here, superintendent, with your cabinet and your team moving forward, is all you asking for is more time from the state?
Oh, I think we've earned it. I wouldn't say give us more time. I think we've earned it. I don't think even in spite of all of the adversity and all of the obstacles in front of us, our trajectory is upward. We're financially stable. We had 2 years of perfect audit. That means nothing, no blemish. So that means we're handling our finances well, our operations are strong, and our academics are on the upward climb. Are they as rapid, really fast? Are we going to be able to do it overnight and snap our fingers or wave a magic wand? So anyone could always say, well, you've turned things around, you reversed the trend, and you're moving upward, but you're not moving fast enough. It's only incremental. I would challenge anyone who would say that our movement from whatever it was, 27.5 points on a 140-point scale to 84 points, I would challenge anyone to say that that's incremental. I would challenge anyone to say moving from 19% of the 140 points to 60% in 1 year, I challenge anyone to say that that's incremental. That is not incremental progress. That is dramatic progress.
And as we wrap this up, What would you like to say to the parents and the students of your school district? You don't always get a lot of chance to just kind of address them, but in the midst of and not only the parents and the students, but also the teachers and staff throughout the district, that as they look at what happened to transfers on the other side of the state, may be afraid for their jobs coming up here in the future if this goes through. What would you like to tell them?
Well, I'd just like to tell them that we've earned hopefully we've earned the opportunity to continue the progress that we've made. It's through parents, your investment, students, your investment, teachers, your investment, that we have made a dramatic turnaround in this school district. Not only did we stop going downhill, but we started going uphill, and we want to continue that. And I thank you for what you've done for that. The road ahead still has a lot of challenges, hoops and hurdles in it, and we've got some work to do. We're not where we want to be, but we're way far beyond where we were. And that's really, I'm saying that's earned us the right to continue.
All right, thank you, Dr. Green, for joining us
Okay.
and giving us an explanation on this transfer issue. And of course, we have more information on the website at kcpublicschools.org.